The Prelude by William Wordsworth. Book 6. That night our lodging was a house that stood alone within the valley, at a point where, tumbling from aloft, a torrent swelled, the rapid stream whose margin we had trod. A dreary mansion, large beyond all need, with high and spacious rooms, deafened and stunned by noise of waters, making innocent sleep lie melancholy upon weary bones. Uprisen betimes, our journey we renewed, led by the stream, ere noonday magnified into a lordly river, broad and deep, dimpling along in silent majesty, with mountains for its neighbors, and in view of distant mountains and their snowy tops, and thus proceeding to Locarno's lake, fit resting place for such a visitant. Locarno, spreading out in width like heaven, how dost thou cleave to the poetic heart, bask in the sunshine of the memory. And Como, thou, a treasure whom the earth keeps to herself, confined as in a depth of Abyssinian privacy. I spake of thee, thy chestnut woods and garden plots of Indian corn, tended by dark-eyed maids, thy lofty steeps and pathways roofed with vines, winding from house to house, from town to town, sole link that binds them to each other. Walks league after league, and cloistral avenues, where silence dwells if music be not there. While yet a youth undisciplined in verse, through fond ambition of that hour, I strove to chant your praise, nor can approach you now ungreeted by a more melodious song, where tones of nature, smoothed by learned art, may flow in lasting current. Like a breeze or sunbeam over your domain I passed, in motion without pause, but ye have left your beauty with me, a serene accord of forms and colors, passive, yet endowed in their submissiveness with power as sweet and gracious, almost might I dare to say, as virtue is, or goodness, sweet as love, or the remembrance of a generous deed, or mildest visitations of pure thought, when God, the giver of all joy, is thanked religiously in silent blessedness. Sweet as this last herself, for such it is. With those delightful pathways we advanced for 2 days' space in presence of the lake that, stretching far among the Alps, assumed a character more stern. The second night, from sleep awakened, and misled by sound of the church clock telling the hours with strokes whose import then we had not learned, we rose by moonlight, doubting not that day was nigh, and that meanwhile, by no uncertain path, along the winding margin of the lake, led, as before, we should behold the scene hushed in profound repose. We left the town of Gravedana with this hope, but soon were lost, bewildered among woods immense, and on a rock sate down to wait for day. An open place it was, and overlooked from high the sullen water far beneath, on which a dull red image of the moon lay bedded, changing oftentimes its form like an uneasy snake. From hour to hour we sate and sate, wondering as if the night had been ensnared by witchcraft. On the rock at last we stretched our weary limbs for sleep, but could not sleep, tormented by the stings of insects, which, with noise like that of noon, filled all the woods. The cry of unknown birds. The mountains more by blackness visible, and their own size than any outward light. The breathless wilderness of clouds. The clock that told, with unintelligible voice, the widely parted hours. The noise of streams, and sometimes rustling motions nigh at hand, that did not leave us free from personal fear. And, lastly, the withdrawing moon, that set before us while she still was high in heaven. These were our food, and such a summer's night followed that pair of golden days that shed on Como's lake, and all that round it lay, their fairest, softest, happiest influence. But here I must break off, and bid farewell to days, each offering some new sight, or fraught with some untried adventure, in a course prolonged till sprinklings of autumnal snow checked our unwearied steps. Let this alone be mentioned as a parting word, that, not in hollow exultation, dealing out hyperboles of praise comparative, not rich one moment to be poor forever, not prostrate, overborne, as if the mind herself were nothing, a mere pensioner on outward forms, did we in presence stand of that magnificent region. On the front of this whole song is written that my heart must, in such temple, needs have offered up a different worship. Finally, whate'er I saw or heard or felt was but a stream that flowed into a kindred stream, a gale confederate with the current of the soul to speed my voyage. Every sound or sight, in its degree of power, administered to grandeur or to tenderness, to the one directly, but to tender thoughts by means less often instantaneous in effect, led me to these by paths that, in the main, were more circuitous, but not less sure, duly to reach the point marked out by heaven. O most beloved friend, a glorious time, a happy time that was. Triumphant looks were then the common language of all eyes. As if awaked from sleep, the nations hailed their great expectancy. The fife of war was then a spirit-stirring sound indeed, a blackbird's whistle in a budding grove. We left the Swiss exulting in the fate of their near neighbors, and, when shortening fast our pilgrimage, nor distant, far from home, we crossed the Brabant armies on the fret for battle in the cause of liberty. A stripling, scarcely of the household then of social life, I looked upon these things as from a distance, heard and saw and felt, was touched, but with no intimate concern. I seemed to move among them, as a bird moves through the air, or as a fish pursues its sport, or feeds in its proper element. I wanted not that joy. I did not need such help. The ever-living universe, turn where I might, was opening out its glories, and the independent spirit of pure youth called forth at every season. New delights spread round my steps like sunshine or green fields.